Do you all consent?
Got it.
All right. So, class number 2.
I can't believe there's only 3 of us. This is such a important topic.
Yeah, I don't know how to get this out to a larger audience. Maybe I should do something with like the kids. I should definitely do something with the kids.
You should definitely do something with the kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
This should definitely start early.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And then maybe you could branch out to doing something with their parents. And then the parents will talk about it and get,
yeah.
others involved.
Yeah. All right. So, class number 2. All right. So I want to cycle back to what we were talking about last week about the idea of like fat Torah, right? And one of my big working theories is that the Shulamite was fat. So who knows who the Shulamite is?
From the Song of Songs.
The Song of Songs. So what is the Shulamite's role in the Jewish canon?
She's the object of love.
Right. She is a very clear object of sexual desire, right? The Song of Songs is like very horny. Right? It is about these 2 people who really just want to connect physically, and they describe each other's bodies in very graphic ways. There's really a lot of physical embodiment and overt sexuality in the text. So, sometimes depending on the sort of exegetical context, people want to kind of explain away the sexy bits of Song of Songs. But the fact of the matter is if you read it on the Pshat, if you read it on the simple level of what is this text saying? It's 2 people that are horny. That's it. And so I chose some specific verses that talk about the Shulamite and her body and sort of the nature of the physical relationship between them. So can I get a volunteer to read chapter 1, verses 2 through 3?
I will.
Go ahead.
Song of Songs 1, 2 to 3. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your loving is better than wine. For fragrance, your oils are goodly. Poured oil is your name.
Great. So, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. So that's pretty overtly sexual. What is the attractive piece in these 2 verses? What is attracting?
It's the fragrance.
The fragrance?
The fragrance and oil.
Oil, right? We can kind of think an oiled up Greek Olympian wrestler or something. But also, the fact is that what is oil? Oil is literally fat, right? So, and she's comparing his loving to wine. So there's something rich and indulgent about the way that she sees her sexual relationship, right? And that it's about wine and oil and it's fragrant. It's an almost edible connection, right? Okay. Can I get a volunteer to read 2, 4, 5?
Sure. He has brought me to the house of wine, and his banner over me is love. Stay me up with raisin cakes, cushion me with quinces, for I am in a swoon of love.
So in this one, what's the
food?
Food, right? It's the act of feeding as a sensual act, right? There's no moralizing about food. Food is something that can be a part of sexual attraction, that feeding and nurturing are part of the desirability of the relationship. right? Verse 4:11, nectar your lips drip, bride, honey and milk are under your tongue. It's kind of the same vibe. And 5:1-2 is the same. But Devin, can you read me 7:2-3?
Okay. How fair are your feet in sandals, O daughter of a nobleman, the curves of your thighs like wrought rings, the handiwork of a master, your navel a crescent bowl, let mixed wine never lack, your belly a mound of wheat hedged about with lilies.
Thank you. So how is this describing the body of the Shulamite?
It sounds like a fat body to me. Like the
Right.
curves of your thighs, like wrought rings, like nice fat folds.
30.
I never
Yeah.
really saw that
Focus.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this. Your belly, a mound of wheat.
Yeah.
Right? It's a mound of wheat is something soft, right? And abundant. And so her belly is soft and abundant, and that's part of why he likes her, right? So I think, like, reading from a Fat Torah lens, right, of where that's what I'm looking for, I think to me, it seems fairly conclusive that we can totally read the Shulamite as fat. And that her fatness is one of the things that makes her lover attracted to her. And so in a society that tends to send messages that fat people are undesirable, I think, the Song of Songs is a very subversive text. It's subversive in many ways, right? Like there's class and potential race dynamics between the lovers. It's subversive because the female has a certain amount of like sexual agency and desire that we don't necessarily see echoed in other biblical texts. But I think this is one of the things where when we look at it in like a contemporary context, is that like for our purposes to read this text this way is really empowering. And and I don't think I'm like making stuff up. I think this is a reading that I think is very legitimate. And I like this Robert Alter interpretation of this text because her navel is a crescent bowl, let mixed wine never lack, right? Like her navel is the goblet with the wine. Just as the crescent concavity of her navel should always be filled, she is never to be arid and empty. So there's something like so sumptuous about this whole text. It's like, it's like a fat lady's boudoir shoot or something, it's like, so I wanted
I
to,
love this.
yeah.
What is mixed wine? I don't know what that is.
So let me look up the Hebrew because I did not pull the Hebrew here. Okay, so this is 7:2. All right. So, so the word is mazeg. And okay, yeah, I looked it up. So here's what it says. It says mixture or mixed wine. Apparently comes from Aramaic and is often water mixed with wine or spiced wine. So it's just rather than yain, it's mezeg. And I think it's just like a blend.
Okay. I mean, I thought maybe it was supposed to be better than, just yayin or something.
Well, so one of the things also is that the Song of Songs is like known for like how it sounds to recite, and maybe like the poet thought mezeg better than yain. I don't know.
Oh.
There's not any particular like assonance or anything. Like I'm looking at the verse.
Mhm.
Sharech agan hasachar al yechsar hamazeg bitnech aremat chitim suga bashoshanim. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's like very poetic sounding.
Yeah,
All the
no, I mean,
essence in the-
if you like listen to the Song of, so even like the very first verse of the Song of Songs, Shir Hashirim Asher Li Shlomo, it's all shh, which is like, you know, and then this verse here, which is the first proper verse, because the first verse is actually just an attribution. Yishakeni minishikot pihu kitovim dodecha miyayin. L'reach shmanecha tovim shemen turak shemecha l'ken alamot ahivucha. So this is an aside. This is my other Song of Songs class, but Victoria Khanna, who describes herself as a Kabbalistic rapper, says that like when you study the Song of Songs, the people who don't know Hebrew actually have an advantage because they can just focus on the sounds, because she really thinks that like the sounds themselves are part of the poetry, you know, separate from their meaning. So, yeah, okay, good. So that's sort of like the whole Fat Torah lens, which obviously could be like, you know, we could talk about forever.
Could have
but
paintings by Reuben, you know, Reuben-esque, you know.
Yeah. I
This
like
could
that.
be a
Actually, I have-
multimedia. This could be multimedia.
Yeah, I have something I'm going to show you next week. That's a little multimedia. So, okay. All right. So we're seeing like sort of the image of the human body in the text, right? So this is like Song of Songs is all about the human body, right? And there's all this like metaphor comparing the human body to the land. And there's all this, right? Like it's very abstract, but it's also very embodied. And so now I want to show you a different text, which also talks about the body. And so cannot talk. This comes from the Talmud, from Mishnah Sanhedrin 4:5. So if you're unfamiliar with looking at Talmudic texts, the Talmud is what is called laconic. So laconic means that it has like gaps in the text. And so when the Talmud is translated, the translators like fill in bits. So the bolded text is like the words that are actually in the Hebrew or Aramaic. The unbolded text is like the extra words that the translator stuck in there so that it was like complete sentences and you could understand what was happening. Yeah, the Talmud is almost, the Talmud is a record of like conversations between different rabbis, and it's almost like a court stenographer's notes, right? Like it's not like full sentences most of the time. So therefore, Adam, the first man, was created alone to teach you that with regard to anyone who destroys one soul from the Jewish people, the verse ascribes him blame as if he destroyed an entire world, as Adam was one person from whom the population of an entire world came forth. And conversely, anyone who sustains one soul from the Jewish people, the verse ascribes him credit as if he sustained an entire world. Can someone, in their own words, summarize what I just read?
So
Adam didn't need Eve.
say again?
Adam didn't need Eve? No, he did.
That if you do something to one Jewish person, you do it to the whole world. And if you do something good to one Jewish person, you do it to the whole world.
Right. So what's the value of like one person?
The whole world.
The whole world, right? So the value of one person is the whole world. The Mishnah cites another reason Adam, the first man, was created alone. And this was done due to the importance of maintaining peace among people, so that one person will not say to another, my father, i.e. my progenitor, is greater than your father. And it was also so that the heretics who believed in multiple gods will not say, there are many authorities in heaven and each created a different person. And this serves to tell of the greatness of the Holy One, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As when a person stamps several coins with one seal, they are all similar to each other. But the supreme Melech HaMlachim, the Holy One, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, stamped all people with the seal of Adam, the first man, as all of them are his offspring, and not one of them is similar to another. Let me read that again. The greatness of the Holy One, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is seen because when a person stamps several coins with one seal, they're all the same. But HaMelech HaMlachim, the Holy One, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, stamped all people with the seal of Adam, the first man, as all of them are his offspring, and not one of them is the same as another. Therefore, since all humanity descends from one person, each and every person is obligated to say, "The world was created for me," as one person can be the source of all humanity and recognize the significance of his action. So, responses.
I still don't understand the seal and the stamps and because like what's different about the seal of Adam compared to the other seal that was being referred to, I guess?
Okay, so if I'm stamping the hands of kids as they're coming in for the Hanukkah bazaar, and I've got like a little Star of David stamp, every Star of David is the same, right? The stamp only has one shape, and that's the shape that gets transmitted. But if we're all stamped using the same stamp, but we all look different, something bigger than us is happening there, right? Does that make sense? So it's like,
Yeah. So it's like, so Adam kind of represents like differences among people, I guess.
well, I don't think it's Adam represents differences among people. What it's saying is all people came from one person, which is Adam, right? And yet all people are different.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's the greatness
so
of
like,
God.
That's the greatness of God. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so it's kind of like having all the humans all descend from Adam. Like everyone ends up looking different because everyone just goes through all this different process. So it's kind of like as opposed to if God just made every single person Adam, like
Right.
in just the exact same. So it's like instead we have this random thing called like reproduction.
Right.
So
Yeah, but
okay,
there's no
very
reproduction
interesting.
in this verse. Well, except for
Oh.
God, his stamping.
Right. So it's, yeah. So what it's saying is that like a human artisan who uses the same mold would create the same thing every time. But God's using the same mold for all of us and creating a different thing every time. So what does this say about the whole concept of like B'Tselem Elohim, created in the image of God?
Can you say that one more time, Cantor?
So one of the phrases that we like to like throw around in Judaism is that everybody is B'Tselem Elohim, created in the image of God. And, oops, sorry, I accidentally forwarded the slide. So if, or like, what does this particular text say about the idea of B'Tselem Elohim, being created in the image of God?
Well, I'm not sure it does say that we're all created in the image of God. I think that's a bit of a leap. We could say that we were created in the image of Adam, but not entirely because we have our own we have differences. But I'm not
Right.
sure that here we see the B'Tselem Elohim.
Right, I think that's true. I think that's true. So,
Well, also
Yeah, Devin?
considering the idea of like the idea of B'Tselem Elohim though, thinking about that from like after thinking about this, it's just interesting because it's like we say everybody was made B'Tselem Elohim, but if every single human being looks completely different, then it's like there's not just necessarily one image of God, I guess,
Right.
because there would technically be as many images of God as there are different individual people, possibly. That's like just one
Mhm.
like possible, like, so yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, oh, I like that. Yeah, so if we're reading this text from like the whole like lens of body liberation that we've been talking about, right, because this isn't actually about like bodies, but if we want to read it from that lens, what lessons can we take from it?
That it's good that, God intended for people to have different bodies. And that was intended. That's a good thing.
Right. And that body diversity is a reflection of the greatness and divinity of the divine maker, right? Because again, if people were designed by a person, they would all look the same, right? Think Barbie doll, right? Every Barbie's the same, right? But the fact that we're all different is a reflection of how great God is. And so all of the forms of bodily diversity that exist are reflections of the power of the divine creator.
But what does that mean for people who, for example, have MS or who had, who have some other kind of congenital disease? I
I
mean,
think that's really challenging. And I think that's one of the places where like the whole like body liberation philosophy can become really challenging, right? Because there's many like disability activists out there who are like, disability is not bad, it's just different. But what if your disability is legitimately causing you suffering?
yeah.
Right? And I think that's a place where this lens can actually be really challenging. And I don't know what the answer is.
It's almost a different question. It's
Right.
not really, it's like, it's an interesting one, but it's not this question.
Can you explain that a little more?
Well, like I totally love this idea that our diversity of humans that are created by God is a reflection of God's greatness. I'm not sure that I understand how suffering is a reflection of God's greatness.
Right.
Right. That's the challenge.
Yeah. So it's almost like the answer to a different question. I don't even know what the question is.
Should I Google the article that I wanted to show next week and show it now, or should I wait till next week?
You be the judge.
I be the judge. I'll do it next week.
Okay.
But yes, because I think that is a real difficulty. And the thing is like Judaism is not pro-suffering, right? Like Judaism is about like joy and comfort, right? There's not this sort of like, I don't know.
Emphasis on
It's not
sainthood
martyrdom
and
yeah.
martyrdom and
I mean, there is martyrdom in Judaism, but
yeah.
it's not like, oh, like fasting until you die is like a sign of sainthood, which it is in parts of Catholicism, or used to be.
It's like it's not just like glorified like by default, like
Right.
when it like when it happens, then it's like, oh, like wow, a person did something like that and it's like still significant, but it's not like like a goal or like an intention, I guess, to just
Yeah.
suffer for yeah.
Well, and also, so like in Judaism, the way we think of martyrdom is Kiddush Hashem, right? Is like for the sanctification of God. And so it's like, and Kiddush means holiness or sanctification, but also means like set apart. And so it's really about like having that dedication to God that goes beyond what would be like I don't know. Last summer, one of my high school classmates died. He had had cancer for several years, and it was awful. He was 27, and he was a guy who was a really, really lovely man and loved by everyone, and just like had so much life left, and then he died. And I went to the funeral and the church was packed. I was literally like standing outside because I got there a little late, and like it was not just standing room only, it was like
Overflowing.
overflowing. And so I could barely hear the priest. But one of the things that I remember the priest saying was that he triumphed in his suffering. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm glad that that theology brings comfort to this kid's family. He was very, very religious. Like, I think he studied in the Vatican. Like, he was Catholic. He studied in the Vatican for a few years. And the funny thing is his parents make the best bagels in Rochester.
His parents what?
Make the best bagels in Rochester.
Oh,
But yeah, I just remember hearing that idea of triumph in suffering and thinking, like, I'm really glad that this theology brings comfort to some of these people, but it doesn't to me. And like, I don't think the Jewish view is that suffering is a triumph. And I think that's really hard because I don't think we know what to do with suffering, right? From like a theological perspective. Yeah, I don't know.
And then that can then cause like mental health challenges, because it's like if in your religion you don't kind of have this idea of like I don't know, like having that be addressed, where it's like, yes, there's a bunch of suffering, but you also get totally comforted by the suffering because like God loves you so much, and like that can be really, it's kind of like this different view, but there's like you can also have this way of, I don't know, like balancing it out, I guess. But in Judaism, yeah, we just have like suffering. Like it's not like we're not like celebrating or glorifying it, but we're also like so experiencing it, and then we just don't even like necessarily talk about it. And it's, yeah, wow, it's really
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I wish that we had something to do with it.
I know what video I'm going to start my class with next week. Yeah. So yes. So I do think that and I wonder what like someone who's like a deep Catholic thinker who was like very into body liberation, how they would reconcile those kinds of things. That probably exists. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. But yes, I do think that the line where bodies cause suffering is really hard to look at from a liberatory perspective.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to skip the next article that I wanted to share. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about sex. Yeah. So, I guess this goes back actually to exactly what we were just talking about. The idea that like Judaism's not about like not enjoying your body. So I had a professor in undergrad. I took a really great class called Race, Religion, and Ethnicity in America. And during one of the early classes, she said the kind of like on one foot difference between Christianity and Judaism is that Christianity is about what you believe and Judaism is about what you do, which I think is part of why Judaism doesn't have such a clear answering to like, what do we think about suffering, right? Because in Christianity, your faith brings salvation in a way that in Judaism it does not, right? But the fact is that if Judaism is about what you do, you can't do anything if you don't have a body, right? And so that makes Judaism a much more embodied kind of experience, right? Like, you know, you have to wash your hands and eat your challah and like, you know, I always like to teach Havdalah to kids because it's like a celebration of all your senses, right? Like there's very like physical and sensory ways of experiencing Judaism. Because if it's about what you do, you have to have the vessel that does.
I didn't get that.
Siri, no one's talking to you. No.
My phone sent a weird text the other day. It must have been Siri like misunderstanding what I was saying to Cindy or something.
You can get in real trouble with that.
Yeah, it was a really strange text. And Cindy said, "Why did you send that text?" And I didn't even know I had sent it.
You
And
hadn't, Siri
and it was
had.
a group text, so I had to explain.
That's funny. So, yeah, so this says, and obviously it's heteronormative, but a person should arouse their partner during sex, and even that they should, well, so a man should arouse
Just
his
read
wife,
it. Yeah.
a man should arouse his wife during sex, and even that he should ensure that she achieves orgasm before he does. This letter also says, but we who have the Torah and believe that God created in all his wisdom, do not believe that God created anything inherently ugly or unseemly. If we were to say that intercourse is repulsive, then we blaspheme God who made the genitals. So
Very
that's
heteronormative.
it is very heteronormative, but the idea
But at least
yeah,
it's saying that the man should be aware of his wife's
Mhm.
needs and desires.
right. And I think the thing that's really standing out to me is we do not believe that God created anything inherently ugly or unseemly. If we were to say that intercourse is repulsive, then we blaspheme God who made the genitals. So even the like gross, icky parts of our human bodies, and like human bodies are gross, right? Like that's are holy and are something that God created with intent. So yeah, so I mean, I should have brought in the quote, but like in Song of Songs in chapter 5, there's a bit where the Shulamite wakes up. She was asleep, but her heart was awake, and she heard her lover knocking on the door, and she's like, hey, I already took all my clothes off. Like, how am I gonna like respond? But she like finds her nightgown, she like gets up, and by the time she gets to the door, he's gone. And while she's coming to the door, it says, Vets beotai natfu more. Her hands were dripping with myrrh. And like some scholars' interpretation of that is that she was wet and maybe she was touching herself. And like some of the other scholarly interpretations, so the like literary scholar definition of grotesque is that it's about the body in process, right? And like in this sexy text, Song of Songs, like the bodies are constantly evolving. They're not like fixed, right? The metaphors that describe them change. Like some of them are like impossible, but it's still like desirable. So that idea that like, again, like even the icky parts are all part of like God's design of our bodies. So when I decided to
Yeah,
learn about Song of Songs, yes, Devin?
I was just gonna say also, I feel like this text also makes me just think about the idea that there's nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to our bodies, because it's just making me think about puberty specifically, because
Right.
I'll never forget like going through puberty and just being like, what is wrong with my body? Because it's like everyone says it's all normal, but it feels like there's something wrong. And there's all this like shame and fear, and it's like there's nothing even wrong, it's just normal, but it just is so overwhelming. And yeah, I don't know, sometimes I feel like puberty itself is like just so traumatizing for
Right.
like basically almost everyone. So yeah.
Right. Well, and
But yeah, this is nice. Like I could have used this then with someone saying, don't worry, it's actually not gross, it's actually not weird, it's completely the way it's supposed to be, you know, like that would have been nice to hear then, I guess.
yeah, well, I don't know if I can use this exact quote with 12-year-olds, but I think the
But Judy
general,
Bloom is good for this.
yeah. Oh, I saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and it was transformative. Um, so, yeah. So, yeah. Okay, great. So, yes, when I decided to become an expert in Song of Songs, I didn't really think about the fact that that was going to mean that I was going to be talking about sex with my congregants for the rest of my life. But it's
But that's so great that you do.
like, now we're going to talk about pooping. So the Talmud loves potty stuff. That should be the heading of this. So,
More potty talk.
So it was taught in a Baraita in Tractate Derech Eretz. So Baraita is like, it's been defined to me so many times I never remember. It's just like extra text, like it's assumed knowledge, like received wisdom says that Rabbi Akiva said, I once entered the bathroom after my teacher, Rabbi Yehoshua, and I learned 3 things from observing his behavior. I learned that one should not defecate while facing east and west, but rather while facing north and south. I learned that one should not uncover himself while standing, but while sitting in the interest of modesty. And I learned that one should not wipe with his right hand, but with his left. Ben Azai, a student of Rabbi Akiva, said to him, you were impertinent to your teacher to that extent that you observed that much? He replied, it is Torah, and I must learn. Similarly, we learned in a Baraita, Ben Azai said, I once entered a bathroom after Rabbi Akiva, and I learned 3 things from observing his behavior. I learned that one should not defecate while facing east and west, but rather while facing north and south. I learned that one should not uncover himself while standing, but while sitting. And I learned that one should not wipe with his right hand, but with his left. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, you were impertinent to your teacher to that extent. He replied, it is Torah, and I must learn. So I brought this text. So actually, this is weird. We read this text in my education class. That was the first time I read it. And the reason that teacher brought it was because of the idea of like, what is Torah that we should learn? And what do we learn from our teachers, right? Even when it's not like formal lessons. Although this is like definitely, beyond the pale. But
wait a minute, wasn't there a story about learning to tie shoelaces by hiding under the bed? I mean, that was a
I don't
little
think
bit.
they had shoelaces in the Talmud, did they?
Or maybe putting on the certain shoe before the
Ties the
yeah,
phylacteries.
you're right.
That's in here.
Well, no, I mean, it was about shoes, I remember.
Right. Right. No, because there's something like, like which shoe you put on first.
Yeah. That was a lot cleaner.
But that wouldn't have served the purposes of this class. Because I think like the reason that I think that this is important in this class is because it's like normalizing bodily functions, right? Like people poop. And like, that's just part of life. And we need to be able to talk about it, right? Like, I never heard people talk about their poop so much as during my year in Israel. It was like,
Really?
yes.
That's so funny.
But it's just that idea of like bodily processes as like a part of life and just something that happens. And I think one of the things also that's really interesting in this text, which is a little bit of an aside to the sort of like bodiness, but the idea that, so Rabbi Akiva followed Rabbi Yehoshua into the bathroom and he learned 3 things. So then Ben Azai followed Rabbi Akiva into the bathroom and he learned 3 things. And it's the exact same 3 things that Rabbi Akiva learned by following Rabbi Yehoshua. And I think the idea there is that like what we model gets passed down, right? Like if we can normalize talking about our bodies in like a liberated way, then that's how like our kids are going to think about their bodies, right? Like we talked last week about how, a lot of people's like internalized fat phobia comes from their parents, right? And like, what are the messages around dieting and weight and body that you get at home? And like, because we repeat the messages that we hear and learn and see, right? And so there's several reasons for bringing this text. And also now I'm the cantor that talked about pooping. So,
When I lived in India, I learned also about, you eat with your right hand
Yeah.
and you wash yourself. Like they don't use toilet paper, they use water
Yeah.
after you go to the bathroom, and you splash yourself with your left hand.
Right.
And that's just a hygiene thing.
Right. And that's exactly what's happening here too. Yes, Devin.
Also, I feel like this is one of the this is an example of something from the Talmud where it's just like very, very like mindfulness-ish to me, because it's like repeating the exact same things and then this really random sentence like it is Torah and I must learn. It's like it's very much like it makes me just like stop and be like, wait, what exactly are they talking about? And so it's like I feel like that kind of like stopping for a second and like becoming a little bit mindful about what we're reading helps also when it comes to like accepting body things, because it's like with mindfulness we can just be like, oh, okay, I'm feeling a certain way, but it's like, okay, I can just process it. And like I don't know, I think that mindfulness can help a lot with well, actually, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think a lack of mindfulness causes a lot of discomfort with the body, because it's like, like, oh my God, what's going on? But this is like, it's like, I don't know, even though it's like very silly because it's talking about what it's talking about, but it's also very kind of like almost calming, because it's very like, I don't know, like
Right.
just awkward almost.
And this idea that there's like something we can learn or something like spiritual about the act of pooping, right? Like, I think that is very mindful and very like bodily aware.
But you could
Right.
also look at it, and I would, not that I would, but as so ritualistic that it's sort of the opposite of mindfulness.
Mm.
That, oh God, more laws, why can't I face north or south? What if the toilet is that way? What am I supposed to do? Find another bathroom? It could be very, it could become halakha, and then people would be going from bathroom to bathroom, finding one where the toilet faces the right direction. It's,
Right. Well, and I think that's kind of the line between like keva and kavanah,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
With keva being like the fixed ritual elements and kavanah being like the intentional elements, right? And how do you imbue things that are keva with kavanah, things that are fixed with intention? And that is, yeah, I guess that kind of goes back to the idea of mindfulness. And also is probably another class. Devin, I challenge you to write a class about mindfulness and pooping.
I don't know. Okay, I'll think about it.
We could come up with a great title.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I want us to listen to a song. So I'm gonna stop my share for a second. Oh, and just FYI, my battery is running pretty low. So I will totally make it until 8, but my computer might just die at some point. So if we run over. So if I disappear, it's not because I don't like you. It's because my charger is in my office and I'm in the sanctuary. Okay.
I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. And I will live each day as a gift I give to you.
All right. I have made it so that I cannot see you. Let me find you again. What am I doing? Okay. There we go. There's everybody. All right. So this is a contemporary song. Dan Nichols. I think the recording I just played was from 2017. I don't know how old this song is. But you know, in the 21st century. And I love that whole idea of like perfect the way I am and a little broken too. I think that that is like really good, like positive, like body liberation messaging, right? That like we can feel broken and still know that we're perfect and that we are made in the divine image, regardless of like what our concerns are, right? But the thing also is that this piece is based on the traditional blessing for going to the bathroom. So again, as we're still talking about this idea of like the gross body processes that we don't necessarily want to think about, traditional Judaism has actually sanctified those body processes, right? Traditionally in Judaism, every time you go to the bathroom, you're supposed to say Asher Yatzar and thank God for making you and making a body that works. And there's actually like halakha, Jewish law, around when you're supposed to recite Asher Yatzar and like even like what do you do if you have a catheter? And the answer is if you have to empty the catheter, then you say Asher Yatzar every time you empty the catheter. Or if essentially you're continuously peeing all day long, then you say Asher Yatzar once at the beginning of the day and you're covered for the day. And so here's the like text of the traditional blessing. And so in Reform Judaism, this has become like, this is in the prayer book. And this sequence that it is in Mishkan Tefillah, in the Reform prayer book, is Matovu, how good are your dwelling places, O Jacob. Elohai Neshama, thank you for my soul. And then Asher Yatzar, thank you for my body. No, it's the other way around. No, it's Elohai Neshama first. I could grab a prayer book. I could actually look that up, but I'm not going to.
There's a beautiful Debbie Friedman
Yeah.
version of Asher Yatzar.
Yes, and it's a mashup with Elohai Neshama. And I think
Yeah.
that like, I always think of those two things as being very interrelated, right? Like we have like the vessel of our body that gets filled with our soul, but also our soul can't do anything without our body, right? Like body and soul in Judaism are like a very intertwined thing, right? Like even the words that we have for soul in Hebrew. Devin, how do you say soul in Hebrew?
There are like at least 5 options.
Okay, give me some of them.
Nefesh, neshama.
Right, so nefesh. Robert Alter argues that nefesh actually means neck. So that's a part of the body. Yeah, keep going.
Neshama.
Neshama means breath. Right. I can't think of any. I mean, I guess ruach is spirit, is also breath.
Ruach, and then also chaya yachida, or like chaya technically is, it's like a mystical term.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I don't know that one.
And then there's one more, I forget the last one, but yeah, there are at least 5,
Yeah.
if not more. So
yeah, there's some interpretations of Adam and Eve that essentially describe Adam as like the physical body, right? Adam, made of earth, right? And then Chava as like the life force, the breath, the soul, and that they can't coexist, or sorry, one can't exist without the other, right? And so we see this like very spiritualized understanding of body. And I always think, yeah, what I usually say when I introduce that sequence of like Matovu is like, we're in this physical space, and then Elohai Neshama, we have a soul, and then we need like the vessel to put it in. Right. And I also just, I just love this blessing. It is like poetic and beautiful. So listen to me read it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam bechokma, uveravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim.
Oops.
Oh,
Oh, it happened.
yeah.
Oh,
So she'll
her computer
probably go
died.
back to her office and plug in, you think? And we
Uh,
should just wait? I don't
let's
know.
I'll text her.
wait. Let's,
Yeah.
I'll text her. I'll let her know that we're
yeah, good
still-
idea. Good idea.
Wow, that was such a not convenient moment.
Isn't
Yeah,
that crazy? Yeah.
at least she warned us.
Yeah. Oh, here she is.
Ah, there you are. At least you warned us. No, you're muted. You're muted.
I warned you, and also technically, my computer died at 8:02, so I did get through supposedly the whole class. Give me 1 second, I'm grabbing a prayer book.
You're in the right place.
Now that I'm on my iPad, it's very hard for me to like pull up the slides, but actually we were at the end of the slides.
Oh,
So-
good.
Mhm. Oh yeah, it is Asher Yatzar, the body, and then Eloheinu Shema, the soul, and the prayer book. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam bechokma, uveravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim, galui v'yadua lifnei chisei chavodecha, she'im yipatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה Adonai, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. So I think, like, I mean, in summation, is that like Judaism is not afraid of the body, right? Like the rabbis of the Talmud were talking about bodies in a very like sort of like gross out humor almost kind of way, right? And like there's this blessing that's specifically for the body doing its functions. And so I think it's very like natural to pair up like our experience of being Jewish with our experience and understanding of like living in our bodies. And so that's kind of like my point for this week. So any questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, I guess because I'm reading this Amos Oza's memoir of love, A Tale of Love and Darkness, I'm kind of thinking in this direction. So what do we make of the, the shtetl Jews who, would never exercise,
Right.
didn't really take care of themselves, and were very bookish.
Right. Right. So that's that's the idea of the old Jew and the new Jew. And like the new Jew who immigrated to the land of Israel, like being a very body.
The chalutz, yeah, the bronzed one who could jump in the ocean and swim. Yeah.
Yeah, and like schlep the stuff on the kibbutz and like be strong and like use their body to like change the world. Yeah, look, I think that everything kind of goes up and down and in and out, right? And so, like, yes, I don't think like shtetl Judaism was necessarily like super connected to the body, but we can see that there's like precedent for deeply embodied Judaism. And I think, like some Jewish mysticism is very like heady and abstract, and some Jewish mysticism is very embodied, right? And so I think we can kind of like choose which angles are meaningful for us at the time that we find ourselves. And one of the things, so I don't know that there's like an article, and if I can find the article, I will bring it next week. But I remember learning in school that Debbie Friedman brought the body back. So, because her Misha Berach was like revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
The idea of praying for healing every single service, right? Like Misha Berach Lecholim is like an ancient concept, or not ancient, it's like old school rabbinic concept. But it would be like, oh, so-and-so is sick, let's go like daven Misha Berach Lecholim on their behalf, like for them. It wasn't like the communal aspect of like, this is available and we're all going to like talk about it and think about it and like make healing like a public process, right? And so in that way, Debbie Friedman's Misha Berach was really revolutionary. And I remember either reading or hearing that phrase, Debbie Friedman brought the body back. And so let's think about her context a little bit. So Reform Judaism was a lot about like establishing like decorum and order, right? Like it started off as like aesthetic reforms that were assimilationist. And it was about like, instead of everybody davening at their own pace and like being noisy and raucous, we're going to like sing hymns all together and it's going to have order, right? And if that's your aesthetic, you're not saying a blessing when you go to the bathroom, right? You're not talking about that, right? And so I think there's sort of like an act of like reclamation here, right? That we don't have to think about our Judaism as something that's all about like order and hiding the things that are harder to talk about. We can have a Judaism that's about the gross parts. Right? I think that's like, overall, I see like a pendulum shift, right? So like Reform Judaism, like was very, there's a lot of sort of like high church synagogues, right? Where it's like marble and gorgeous and there's an organ and a choir conductor and like, it's very
robes,
right? And robes are about like uniformity and maybe making everybody look the same. And that's part of that idea of like order, right? But at this point, we're comfortable with enough with our identity as American Jews that we can add a little bit of the mess back in, right? And I mean, you all know me, right? Like, I'm a messy person. I would not like do great at a classical Reform synagogue. I'm never polished enough. I look terrible in a robe. But I think that we have that space now, right? To like bring in the pieces of the old that serve us and to retain the pieces of the new that serve us. And so I think like the whole idea of like body liberation and like understanding that all of our different bodies and all of their processes are a part of like the divine plan is also just I think there's also like an aesthetic liberation that goes with that, right? Like, that we don't have to like figure out a way of fitting into a particular model, not just with our physical bodies, but like also with the way that we're gonna like worship or practice our Judaism.
I also love that song. I wish we could sing that song in services.
Yeah, we can. I haven't. But I do know it and I have used it in services. Why have I not? I guess because of Mishkan Tefillah, it's in the morning service and I just have other things to do because the morning service can get long if I keep adding in songs, but I certainly can. I think it would also-
But not at Shabbat?
No. I mean, sorry, morning, M-O-R,
Shabbat
not
service.
Oh, morning. Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually think that would probably be a really powerful song for me to teach the religious school, because they got weird bodies. They're going through puberty. So
And maybe at the Pride Shabbat, you could sing it or
Mm.
something like that.
that's a good idea too. Yeah. Yeah. I think
I love that.
yeah, for Pride Shabbat last year, I featured like, I think exclusively queer composers, and Dan Nichols is not, but I do think that the message works beautifully for Pride Shabbat. So, and he has Alana Arian on one of the studio recordings of it, so that counts.
Good.
Um,
That
Yay.
sounds good. Yeah, I really love that. I love that blessing a lot, and it really makes me think a lot about the pandemic and
Mhm.
just being grateful for when my body does work and when my
Mhm.
body doesn't have to deal with a lot of really, really just hard things that so many people have just been having to deal with for so long, way before the pandemic. But just, I don't know, the pandemic just really, I think, raised a lot of awareness about bodies and what it means to be vulnerable with your physical body. So, yeah.
Right. Well, and I think the blessing of Asher Yatzar brings up another hard question, right? We talked about the idea of like, what if the uniqueness of your body causes suffering? And like Asher Yatzar says, like, thank God everything in here works. And it's like, well, what if it doesn't? Right? Like, how are you supposed to say that blessing? So next week is going to be like disability lens. So I have some stuff to bring for that, but I think that that's something that there's not like an answer to, right? It's something that is like an ongoing conversation within the disability sphere, because like traditional Judaism is very much like exclusionary of people with disabilities, and so like, how do you carve out that space? And yeah, there's people doing the work, and it's an ongoing challenge, and I have a bunch of different sources to show you. So
Cool.
Very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot to look forward to also.
yeah, I
Maybe
kind of
we
wish,
should continue this class.
yeah, I kind of wish I'd scheduled it for more than 3 sessions.
I
But-
kind of do too, but I wish there were more people here
Right.
to get it too.
I'm going on vacation, so the way I scheduled it was like, I'm teaching until I leave. So
Oh, that's right.
wonderful.
Yeah. Going to your family. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Very nice.
So, yeah, but I mean, I do think that in a lot of ways, this is just like my lens, right? Like, this kind of like thought processy is like what informs like how I am as a clergy person. So I do think that even if I'm not like toughless teaching this all the time, like this is like what's happening. So, but yes, I do think that I need to figure out a way to tap into a larger audience.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, preach, preacher, preach.
Yeah. I haven't given the Devar Torah in a while. So
Take it.
I actually haven't given the Devar Torah in a while. So,
Oh,
but
yeah.
High
Right.
time.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's nice to see all of
Yeah.
you.
Wonderful to see you all.
Hmm.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.